So if I go up here to this place 2D texture node, you'll see repeat U and repeat V. If I now set this to something like 20, it's going to make that cloth texture much, much finer. And I found, I set it like 500. Sure, like don't be afraid to make this like a really, really large number, especially for something like cloth. And I've actually found, like, I think for the most part, like these cloth textures in Maya look pretty decent. Actually, let me just zoom in like a real person. All right, yay, cool. It's like it's like not bad looking for just like a random cloth bump map. A lot of times, if I'm adding a cloth texture, I'll just use this. The one thing I might do, I'll go back to my, if I go back to my bump depth, I'll usually, this is like where I'll set it down to like 0.2 or maybe like 0.1, 0.1, because like whatever it was before is like ridiculous for a cloth texture. But I think this might be another one of those times where it's like, because of projector, I'll make this a little bit more intense. Can you guys like all kind of see that on the projector, sort of? Ish, okay. So assuming that I had this texture that I liked, if I wanted to make this maybe, quick, what color or pattern do we want for this, table?
Chevron?
What? Wait for it. Chevron texture. Ah, this is chevron. Dang. All right. Let's grab this. We're gonna go with this one because it. No, why do these all have stock image things? Gross. Cool. We're gonna grab this. This is totally. What am I doing? Save image. Chevron text. I love how you're just like chevron. Just like, all right. So one thing that sometimes actually what I do a lot is I'll map in, instead of mapping this into color, I'll map it into roughness. And what that does is it'll actually give, potentially, an interesting effect with chevron text. Where it'll kind of create the effect of like half of your, or like part of your table being like woven of a shinier material. In this case, it doesn't really seem to be doing all that much on my roughness channel, so what I might actually do is just break this. Sometimes I map it into metalness, which is a questionable decision. But it does sometimes look cool. I mean, so my point is basically with this weird sort of demo is that, oh duh, I know it didn't work before. So remember when I was like, yeah, check on alpha as luminance? You just need to check alpha as luminance. So you'll notice that like when I do that, I haven't actually modified the texture. Like this is actually still just white as a base texture. My light is slightly orange, and then the metalness is affecting the, it looks like it's affecting the color a little bit because it's like how light is reflecting off of this. But it can potentially, like, and you can even, actually, if you go down into color balance a little bit, you can fiddle with, you can sort of, like, fudge the values of this so it's, like, potentially less metallic if you want. Kind of crapshoot. And then you could go in and just, like, change the color. Like, if I wanted this tablecloth to be a fantastic aqua awfulness, I could do that. And you can kind of change colors that way a lot. So like one thing, like I'll do that a lot for cloth. A lot of times I'll get like sort of metallic cloth, or like something where like if you were trying, oh god, beautiful. If you were trying to do something like an embroidered fabric, cloth. A lot of times that'll be done on like something like this, where it's like you have a flat fabric, but then you have this sort of raised embroidered gold thread texture on here. So this is something that you could do with like a metallic color and bump map. So you'd, like on the bump map, you'd want like the basic texture of the cloth, and then all of these little ridges for the embroidered bits. And then anywhere where there's like gold thread, you're going to want that obviously in the color channel to be gold, and you're going to want that more metallic in the metalness channel. So something like that kind of makes sense? A little bit? All right. There is one more thing. Actually, let me see. Okay. These computers, there's a really awesome program you can use for mapping in stuff from like textures.com. Crazy Bump. And it's called Crazy Bump. It was made in like the 90s, but it takes 2 seconds to download. I'm gonna see if they actually let me, see if I'm actually allowed to download things on these school computers. But you could basically like throw a file texture into Crazy Bump. What hast thou done with my downloads? Oh.
If you download it on a laptop, put it on an SSD drive that you plug into your computer, it works.
Cool. I don't have a laptop, and I'm not going to do that right now. But basically what Crazy Bump will let you do, you can import a file texture like this rock, and I have a tutorial on this. It should be linked in the tutorials thing on Drive already. But you basically just import a photograph. You can use like wood, stone, whatever. It's really good for like wooden rocks, in my experience. But it'll load it into the program, and then you can basically adjust all of the maps for the shader, and it'll give you a real-time preview. So yeah, it'll give you a real-time preview of more or less like what the object will look like with all of the maps and settings that you have turned on. And you can adjust like slider values, which will affect the different textures, and you can do that for pretty much all of the maps for your object. You can shift the light around, see how it affects things. And then once you're done, you can export all of your textures, and you can plug them more or less directly into Maya, and have it generate a texture that looks pretty much like what this does here. So it is a really, really, really good way. If you're just like, oh, I just need like a quickie wood texture and get like a quick normal map or something like that, you can use Crazy Bump to do that. Yeah, it's super nice. It's not a terribly difficult program to use. You just need to like go in and fiddle with it for a few minutes. But you can see like this is kind of the final texture that it would generate for you, where it like has this really deep, nice shadows in between the rocks. And then as the light mousses over the rocks, it catches like some of the highlights of the rocks, but not all of them. And that's the beauty of working from like something like a more complex file texture like this. So, yeah. So I guess, are there any questions on anything with texturing in Maya? Questions on what's expected for the homework this week, anything like that? Cool. I will say it would be nice for the textures if there was something done that was maybe a little bit more customized. Like, instead of just grabbing like a wood texture and putting it on your object, do something where you would need to maybe play with it a little bit to get positioning right, or like do something where you have, it's a little bit, I guess, more specific and reasoned, like where I had to come through and like position the label specifically on the piece, something like that, instead of just sort of applying a generic texture to this. That would be good practice, but it's not strictly required. Anywho, so I mean, I guess if